to consider two separate measures, a continuing resolution related to government funding, and HRES 719, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Charlie Kirk. On the continuing resolution, Congress can and should act expeditiously and on a bipartisan basis to advance this measure. We must keep our work going in service to the American people. Just last week, the House voted to go to conference on 3 appropriations bills, a return to regular order. This short-term CR would allow those important negotiations to continue and hopefully result in a bipartisan resolution. Our Democrat colleagues should find no reason to object to this measure because no reasonable objection exists. I implore my colleagues, let's not use any policy focus, whether it be health care, tax policies, or even the security funding we're looking at, as a pretext for a shutdown. This legislation keeps the government open. It's that simple. On HRES 719, the resolution honoring the life and memory of Charlie Kirk, I say this. He spent his life advocating for the principles and God-given freedoms that underpin civil society everywhere. The world recognizes the positive, enduring impact he made and how his work continues to inspire countless men and women to debate the issues of the day. He did this all with an eye toward creating and nurturing an open exchange of ideas among people from all walks of life and glorifying God every step of the way. Fostering civil dialogue, like what Charlie Kirk did day in and day out, serves to unite us all. We should never forget that. Honoring his life is the right thing to do, and I fully intend to support this measure. I hope our colleagues on both sides of the aisle do the same. With that, I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments that he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and let's be crystal clear. Republicans have 3 choices. 1, work with us on a bipartisan bill so millions of Americans don't lose health insurance. 2, do what Donald Trump said, pass the CR yourselves. You control government, after all. Or 3, Republicans can shut it all down. Because make no mistake, the health care of millions is on the line. If Republicans let these tax credits lapse, nearly 24 million Americans will see premiums skyrocket, up 93% on average, 93%. A 60-year-old couple making $80,000 a year, they'll pay over $17,000 more. That's over $1,400 every single month. A family of 4 making $64,000, that's an extra $2,600 a year. This isn't a warning light. This is a 5-alarm fire, and Republicans are pretending that it doesn't exist. The American people are already facing a cost of living crisis, fueled by Donald Trump and Republicans' reckless policies. The Trump tariffs and the big ugly bill have raised the cost of everything, from housing to utilities, and nowhere has the impact been more serious than for America's health care. Their big ugly bill was the single largest cut to health care in American history, kicking 15 million people off coverage, closing hospitals and nursing homes, blocking preventative care, and yanking food benefits away from struggling families. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has taken an axe to the NIH, shutting down cancer research, halting clinical trials. The withholding of funding for life-saving medical research and the evisceration of common-sense vaccines programs is making Americans sicker. It's a full-fledged assault on working families, hospitals, patients, science, and driving up costs for everyone else. And here's the kicker this morning. This morning, Speaker Johnson said we can just deal with all of this later. He said, let's wait until the end of the year. Wrong. The nonpartisan CBO says if we wait until December, 1.5 million more people will lose insurance, and premiums will be even higher. Timing matters here. In just a few weeks, families will get their premium notices. On November 1, open enrollment begins. The clock is ticking. Congress needs to act to address the looming health care crisis now by preventing one of the most significant health care premium hikes in history and addressing Medicaid cuts that are throwing people off their health care and closing hospitals and nursing homes. Republicans broke our health care system and plunged us into this crisis. They have an obligation to work with us to fix it. but instead they have not done a single thing in this bill to restore the damage that they have caused. In fact, with this bill, they are charging full steam ahead towards the largest premium increases in American history. That is unacceptable, and Democrats will not go along with a bill that adds even more fuel to this health care crisis, pushing life-saving care out of reach for kids, families, and seniors. I thank the witnesses for being here. I look forward to hearing your testimony. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGovern. Without objection, any prepared statements that our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our first panel, the distinguished chairman of the Committee on Appropriations, Chairman Cole, and Ranking Member DeLauro from the Committee on Appropriations. Mr. Cole, of course, is the former chair of this committee, and we are very pleased to have him back. Your full statements will be submitted for the record, and we ask you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Chairman Cole, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Chairwoman Fox, and Ranking Member McGovern, and esteemed members of the Rules Committee. Again, I thank you for your warm welcome and your kind invitation to testify today. I appear before you on the Continuing Appropriations and Extension Act 2026. Over the past year, the Appropriations Committees worked diligently to complete our work on fiscal year 2026. We initially had a late start due to prior constraints, but that didn't stop us from taking quick action. Our markup process successfully delivered all 12 regular appropriations bills out of committee. The House has also passed 3 FY 2026 appropriation bills across the floor, representing over 60% of overall discretionary spending. As members are aware, the House has also voted to go to conference on our first bill package covering military construction and Veterans Affairs, agriculture, and legislative branch bills. We have every reason to expect that the House and Senate will be conferencing on these bills shortly, and that a bipartisan bicameral agreement is not only possible, but within reach. That's why we're here today. With the end of fiscal year 2025 rapidly approaching, and with a forthcoming recess due to the high holy days, we have unfortunately run out of time. Today's bill provides us with additional time. It includes a clean extension of government funding through November 21st with minimal anomalies. This short-term extension will give us time to conference and pass our first 3-bill package out of both the House and the Senate and send it to the President's desk. Once this first package is complete, we can move on to the next package of bills. In doing so, we will return the appropriations process to regular order, where it should be, and will put an end to the cycle of continuing resolutions followed by omnibus spending bills. Importantly, the bill also includes robust security funding for all 3 branches of government, including members of Congress, along with the executive branch officials and Supreme Court justices. While we expect to undertake additional security measures in the future, these resources represent an important first step in responding to the countless threats public officials face today. The legislation also does not contain a single poison pill. It's a clean CR, fully funding our government. This includes our military and defense needs, support for our veterans, and critical services for our constituents like roads, parks, child care, water projects, infrastructure improvement, scientific research, job training, and countless others. I look forward to continuing the FY 2026 appropriations process in the coming weeks. I thank each of you for your time, and I look forward to your questions today. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cole. Ranking Member DeLauro, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member McGovern, members of the committee. Delighted to be with you this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with the distinguished chair of the Appropriations Committee, Congressman Tom Cole. You've heard me say this before, but in addition to being a colleague, he is a friend. I oppose this partisan continuing resolution that shortchanges the special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children by $600 million. That's below what President Trump requested. It fails to address the health care crisis, and it fails to protect Congress's power of the purse and to safeguard the investments promised to our communities that are set to expire because of Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought's lawlessness. Republicans have once again chosen the partisan route, deciding they would rather take us to the brink of a shutdown instead of lowering costs for millions of Americans and preventing people from getting kicked off their health care. While the Appropriations Committee discussions had made some progress, Republican leadership has refused to meet with our Democratic leaders. Republicans would rather shut down the government than sit down and talk about health care. But this is exactly how House Republicans kicked off the appropriations process. From the beginning, they came to the table with funding bills that are filled with extreme, reckless cuts and harmful policies that have been rejected on a bipartisan basis. We are now 9 months into this administration and weeks away from the end of the fiscal year. And the cost of living crisis has only gotten worse under President Trump. Americans are struggling with rising costs for everyday necessities. They are living paycheck to paycheck, but the president and House Republicans are not laser focused on the cost of living crisis. Instead of lowering prices, Republicans passed a bill to cut nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, which will strip health care coverage from more than 15 million people. Over $500 billion in cuts to Medicare will be triggered by this law, harming America's seniors. In their signature law, Republicans slash nutrition benefits for poor families, which will cause an additional 1 million kids to go hungry. They did all of this in order to pass trillions of dollars in tax cuts for big corporations and for billionaires, and adding $4 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years. House Republicans continued to double down on their attacks on the working class, the middle class, and vulnerable Americans. Their full-year funding bills are an assault on public health, slash medical research, eliminating funding for reproductive health, and eviscerate education and job training. They use their 2026 full-year bills not to right the wrongs of their big, ugly bill, but to make health care even more expensive and slash research into life-saving cures. They cut funding for the National Institutes of Health, for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They slashed funding for state and local health departments, substance use prevention and treatment, mental health services, and eliminated funding for tobacco prevention and HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment. To top it all off, House Republicans continued their full-scale attempt to eliminate public education, decimating support for children in K-12 elementary schools and threatening the future of an entire generation. These bills are all cut from the same cloth. They help major companies and billionaires grow their power, raise prices on the backs of the working class. Hardworking Americans suffer while Republicans protect and line the pockets of billionaires and big corporations. President Trump, guided by Project 2025 author and Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought, is also unlawfully stealing funds that we, Democrats and Republicans in the House and in the Senate, passed into law. Funds that meet the needs of the American people. Russ Vought continues to withhold more than $410 billion, $410 billion from families, from farmers, from children, from small businesses and communities. I won't go into it, but this is a tracker of the $410 billion. $6.6 billion in agriculture, $51.7 billion in commerce, justice, science, $3.3 billion in defense, energy and water, $76.7 billion, Financial services and general government, $387 million. Homeland Security at $102.4 billion. Interior, Environment, and related agencies, $31.8 billion. Labor, Health, Human Services, Education, $32.1 billion. Military construction, Veteran Affairs, $19.5. State Foreign Ops and related programs, $43.5 billion. Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, $44.3 billion. That affects every part of this country. Some of these funds are set to expire soon. As much as $5 billion for the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will lapse soon. Money promised to help farmers and ranchers drive advancements in agriculture is at risk. Over $1 billion in the nonprofit security grants, Homeland Security grants that keep our communities safe are at risk of expiring. Grants to help Americans put a roof over their head would disappear. As the courts have repeatedly concluded, this administration's disregard for our nation's spending laws has harmed every corner of our country. Children in elementary schools have been denied resources they need to succeed. Farmers in rural communities have been left to fend for themselves, and communities have been robbed of resources to keep people safe. Russ' vote has stripped hope away from cancer patients, made the cost of living crisis even worse for working families. Make no mistake, Russ' vote wants a shutdown. He wants the country to continue spiraling to chaos so he can keep stealing from our communities. In addition to appropriations, Congress needs to act to address the health care crisis, which will get even worse if tax credits that help working families are allowed to expire. Republicans broke our health care system, punched us into this crisis. They have an obligation to work with us to fix it. But instead, they have not done a single thing in this bill to restore the damage they have caused. In fact, with this bill, they are charging full steam ahead towards the largest premium increases in American history. Democrats will not go along with a bill that adds even more fuel to this health care crisis, pushing life-saving care out of reach for kids, families, and seniors. Democrats want to lower the cost of living and deliver critical services and investments to all Americans. That can be achieved through bipartisan cooperation to pass annual funding bills signed into law by President Trump. It cannot be achieved through a Republican's shutdown or another full-year continuing resolution that puts billionaires, big corporations, and unelected bureaucrats over the American people. And the majority is failing to live up to their own promises to the American people, that they can do the hard work of governing. They have unequivocally demonstrated they cannot. This bill is an admission that House Republican majority cannot govern. They would rather gamble on a partisan continuing resolution than work with Democrats to lower the cost of living and address the health care crisis. Let us hope the majority does not drive us straight to a Republican shutdown. But if they do shut down the government, I have no doubt the American people will know who is to blame. Vote no on this continuing resolution. Abandon this partisan game. Join Democrats at the table. It is past time to govern. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. Chairman Cole, would you like to respond to anything Representative DeLauro had to say?
Well, first of all, I want to join her in proclaiming what good friends we are. And we've worked together for a long time. There's no member of Congress I admire more than my friend. Usually because we found common ground. Where I would disagree with her on this is all we're trying to do is keep the government open so we can continue the negotiating process. We're a lot closer to one another in our bills than one might suspect because, again, these bills are all thoughtfully put together. But we're also willing to compromise on these bills and negotiating. I see no good purpose in letting the government shut down while that process is underway. Again, we've got 3 bills we're pretty close on. We think we could get to the president's desk. I think we could do other packages as well. That would be my only point. What's the good of shutting down the government? In terms of some of the other things that my friend has brought up, the health care subsidies and restructuring Medicaid, those really aren't the jurisdiction of our committee. They don't really belong in this. It's my understanding that Senator Thune has signaled, and I think the president as well, they're willing to talk about some of these issues and open up a separate negotiation. I'd say the Appropriations Committee has enough to do just getting appropriations bills done and these others. But again, if our leadership wanted to open up that negotiation, that's fine. I think that's appropriate. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to attach those goals to a 7-week funding bill. That's really what's at issue here. Do you want to shut down the government over matters that are unrelated to the day-to-day functioning of the government? There are legitimate policy differences. You can have debates over them. You can come to a compromise on them. Indeed, there's some support in both Republican conferences for some of these things. But again, I don't think they have much to do with an appropriations bill. We're just trying to keep the government open for 7 weeks so we can keep talking and moving appropriations bills. And again, and I want to commend our friends on the other side of the rotunda. This first time I think in 7 years that the Senate actually has acted on 3 appropriations bills and gotten them across the floor of the United States Senate. They didn't get a single bill done last year. We got 7 of ours done and over 70% of the spending taken care of. So I want to encourage this good activity on the Senate. And so Senator Thune and certainly Chairwoman Collins and Ranking Member Patty Murray have shown if you let them do their job, they'll come to an agreement on things. They'll start moving bills. It's just going to take more time than we would have liked. A lot of time was consumed in a pursuit, however you feel about it, of what I think is a very consequential piece of legislation, the one big beautiful bill. So that's fine. Again, we'll do what we're asked to do, but our job is to do appropriations. We need a little more time to do it. That's all we're asking for. And indeed, the length of this CR, the administration, asked for all the way through January. Our Democratic friends didn't want to do that. I agree with them on that. I want to keep these boundaries pretty short to keep pressure on. We've all been in Congress long enough to know that too often, and this doesn't matter who's in control, deadlines are like alarm clocks around here. I mean, so let's have a reasonable deadline. This is a reasonable deadline. It doesn't do anything other than just keep the government functioning. And I can't understand why we would want to precipitate a crisis by not funding the government when there's fruitful negotiations going on.
Madam Chair, do I have an opportunity to respond to my colleague and friend?
I suspect Mr. McGovern will do that, Mr. Laura.
Well, but the chairman has had an opportunity to respond to my remarks. I have had not an opportunity to respond to any of his remarks.
We'll come back in a minute. I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
For the chairman. So I appreciate what you just did in terms of clarifying the issue. This is a 7-week funding bill. Now let me set the context for the American people if we can. All this bill does is keep the federal government running at the same levels it's been at since 2024. Is that correct?
Correct.
It was President Biden who initially signed these funding levels into law, correct?
Correct.
So I'm a little confused about Ms. DeLauro saying not enough money has been spent on these issues since those funding levels were set when Democrats were in the majority, correct?
Correct.
And I love your analogy about a deadline's like an alarm clock. We certainly do need deadlines around here. So one more thing, Chairman Cole. You're currently working with your Senate counterparts to negotiate over a distinct set of standalone appropriations bills. You mentioned the Senate has done something it hadn't done for a long time. We've done some things haven't been done for a long time. So following a regular order passage of those bills in their respective chambers, correct?
Correct.
And will this CR empower you to continue to work on those?
It would.
Okay, so we're talking about a very short period of time, no increased spending, living with the Biden budget, which might be inadequate according to some, but if it were inadequate, our friends didn't say much.
I will say this, we do increase funding for security for the executive
sir.
branch and the Supreme Court and for our own chamber, and with the idea that would have to be revisited. This is pretty, we all know we've had tragic current events that have probably refocused attention on that. So, and I've said we'll carry whatever security measure that, the leadership of both parties and the administration decides appropriate. So this was the first shot at that. That could, and I would expect would change. Particularly, we would end up extending those security arrangements at some point, probably in the legislative branch bill.
The hope is that the short-term continuing resolution will give you and the Democrats the opportunity to continue to work together to pass our other bill, the bills that would fund the government for the rest of the year.
Correct.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Laura, I'm going to recognize Mr.
Thank you.
McGovern.
So I don't have an
I
opportunity
know
to
he'll
respond
ask
to
you
my
the
colleague.
same question
Thank you
I
very,
asked.
very much.
Before I yield
Appreciate
to
the
you-
courtesy.
Before I yield to you to respond, it's my time, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. I get a kick out of when people say that how important deadlines are. We had a deadline on resolutions of inquiry, and I'm looking to the quote from our colleague who's not here, Chip Roy, who justified this extending basically the prohibition on resolutions of inquiry through September 30th, because they just wanted to be able to get through reconciliation, and then we'd go back to, allowing them, and then in the rule we just passed, it got extended again till, I think, March of 2026. The ability to be able to call up resolutions on the tariffs, again, same thing. So, when people say deadlines around here, that doesn't mean anything, because people violate them all the time. And I'll just say one other thing, and I'll yield to Mr. Lauro. There's also an issue just of trust. We pass bills in Congress, spending bills, and expect those, those numbers and those funding levels to be respected. And then we see rescissions, and we see, unilateral attempts by the president to freeze the money. So even when we pass things around here, we have no guarantee, in fact, that what the work that we do here, that, quite frankly, I am disappointed that Republicans haven't stood up for this institution. But the work that we do here gets ignored, and there's no pushback. But I'll yield to Mr. Lauro for any response to the chairman.
So thank you very, very much, Mr. McGovern. And I say this with having negotiated bills as both chair and ranking members with my colleague, Congressman Cole, having in the past negotiated bills with Senator Shelby and Congresswoman Granger and others, that the central fact of the Appropriations Committee, the heart and soul of the Appropriations Committee, is that there is no other piece of legislation where there has to be the agreement of Democrats and the Republicans, House and Senate, and then get that to the president for signature. And there's no other legislation where that is the requirement. The key is the bipartisan nature of the process, and which has been, in terms of the House bills, I'll make this point, the 12 House bills that came to us were nothing but unilaterally partisan bills, through and through. No consultation, no conversation. To my colleagues on the Senate side, to their credit, they, in fact, produced bills that were in committee bipartisan and on the floor bipartisan. Not the case on the House side. Nevertheless, just a small capsule here. It was just about a week ago where the four corners, House, Senate, got it together. And what we discussed at that time, and what we said was what we needed as Democrats in order to move forward was three things to support the motion to go to conference, which we did. And the first thing was top lines and subcommittee allocations for agriculture, for Milcon VA, and for Ledge Branch. And in fact, we came to a meeting of the minds on the numbers. We have moved ahead in that area so that the bills have moved forward. The second thing that we spoke about was a commitment to have a bipartisan negotiation on a continuing resolution. A bipartisan negotiation on the continuing resolution, including looking at what Democratic priorities are in terms of moving forward, and also looking at what Mr. McGovern made reference to. We have come to agreements in the past in a bipartisan way. And lo and behold, we have, and I have this in front of me, this is not a small item, $410 billion, either frozen or terminated, dollars that was appropriated and passed by Democrats and Republicans. So we said that Democratic priorities, what those were and are, and not stealing the money that we appropriate. Interestingly enough, in this process, we have the OMB director throws into the mix a pocket rescission. How about that as a good faith effort to move forward? But, and I would just say in that meeting, both of my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues, we all expressed that willingness to have a bipartisan negotiation on the continuing resolution. And the third piece was that the leadership, above our pay grade, needed to gather together to lay out what the issues were that we were going to try to move forward on. Well, lo and behold, we have a partisan continuing resolution. There has been no consultation with Democrats. There has been no indication of concern with the priorities on our side of the aisle, nor has there been, any expression that we can't continue to come to agreement, and those agreements are jettisoned because of the OMB director or by President Trump. And by the way, the president, I believe, said the other day, and about even meeting with Leader Jeffries and Leader Schumer, it's a waste of time to meet with them. That's a quote from the President of the United States saying that. He further says, he called the play last week when he told congressional Republicans, this is to jam a partisan spending bill down the throats of an American people without Democratic support. Now, that is not bipartisanship, and we are willing to negotiate, at the table to negotiate, but you can't negotiate by yourself. There needs to be a partner in that effort, and quite frankly, with regard to this continuing resolution, we have no partner. We have been frozen out of the discussions, and therefore, how do we sit down and agree to something that says take it or leave it? Not doable. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Let me just ask, I got a couple more things I want to raise. Ranking Member DeLauro, you and I both share a passion for improving access to nutritious food and ending hunger, particularly for children and families. The WIC program does just that. It provides modest nutrition benefits for pregnant and postpartum moms and young kids to ensure that young families can remain healthy. So we just got this CR from Republicans a few hours ago, but from my read of the bill, and Mr. Chairman, you correct me if I'm wrong on this, it does not include the additional $600 million for WIC requested by the Trump administration. Am I right on that?
Absolutely.
And
this is the Trump administration requested $600 million more for the WIC program.
In their request, the administration said that without this anomaly, and I quote, states would not be able to serve all eligible participants at the current benefit levels, end quote. So I'm a little surprised to see that House Republicans didn't think it was important to include this anomaly in the bill. And maybe you can respond to why is it important that we address this anomaly now and fully fund WIC rather than kicking the can down the road and having this discussion in December? I mean, either, I don't, I mean,
Well, it's a mystery to me. I mean, the president, you read his words, says it all. If we were in charge, we would have added this $600 million. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have walked away from what the president has requested, $600 million, in order to be able to feed women, infants, and children, to make sure that they are not dropped off the rolls here. So that's, it doesn't make any sense.
right, no, I mean, I think pregnant and breastfeeding moms and young
Right.
kids deserve to know they'll fully have access to formula and basic staples like milk and vegetables. I mean, there's no reason to not address this looming issue right now. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's part of the Ag Bill, which is under negotiation right now, and it will be in the Ag Bill that is fully funded. And so we thought we're close enough there, that's where it should go. Obviously, the numbers are what they are until December, but that would be part of a final agriculture bill.
Yeah, well, the numbers aren't where they should be between now and December. Mr. Laurel?
Well, if it's not in, if this is something that says it's not there, then, it's,
It would be part of the bill. I mean, is under negotiation, and that would not be one of the negotiating parts. We would go where the administration asked us to go.
well, you signal that you don't want to do that. That's a big signal.
So let me just kind of summarize, kind of the choices we have here. I mean, one, in terms of this continuing resolution, we can work on a bipartisan bill and address what was one of our central concerns right now, is that Americans don't lose health insurance and don't get stuck with these high premiums that are coming down the line. Two, the president has said, Mr. Moore referred to it, but it's been in the press, he said to the Republicans, pass the CR yourselves.
Right.
You control government after all. And we saw what happened in the Senate, was it last week, with nominees, that they nuked the filibuster process. So I'm sure they could find some heavy-handed tactics to move this thing through. Or three, Republicans can shut it all down. The reality is, and this is kind of where we're at, when the Speaker of the House says that we can have all these discussions and push it down the road, timing matters when it comes to health care. In just a few weeks, families are going to get their premium notices. And on November 1, open enrollment begins, and the clock is ticking. And so the idea that we can, we'll just let things proceed, let families deal with what they have to deal with, and maybe maybe in December we'll be in a better mood to find some accommodation on this. That doesn't help my constituents.
Mr. McGovern, in the labor HHS bill, which we just spent almost, I don't know how many hours last week going through, when you take a look at what the healthcare issues, that the healthcare has been stripped out. Funding for the NIH, funding for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, funding for mental health services, all of these health things being stripped out of the labor HHS bill. That's indicative of what you're saying.
Are the ACA tax credits in the labor
No.
HHS bill?
No.
They don't
that's
belong
what-
in the bill.
No, that's.
We don't-
that's
you're-
not-
you're-
The point of matter is,
talking-
how are we going to address the immediate, the soon-to-be healthcare crisis?
You got hospitals or in the rural hospitals, community hospitals, all of that, which is at stake. Yes, Medicaid, 15 million people thrown off Medicaid. It's a legitimate issue to deal with in a continuing resolution. Why isn't it a legitimate issue to deal with that? You've got two separate things here. You've got an appropriations piece, but you've got other things that go into a continuing resolution.
It's not the jurisdiction of our committee.
Well, you know what? Around here, jurisdictions can be expanded, and the reality is, if we wait, the uninsured will be about 1.5 million people higher, and that's I don't know. I kind of think we spent the whole day today talking about the District of Columbia, and we're going to be addressing bills regarding micromanaging the District of Columbia. I don't know about your constituents, but my constituents are a hell of a lot more concerned about their health care and the health care of their families. And again, I'm worried that we're not going to, then we're not going to deal with it, and people are going to get screwed.
Well,
So
it certainly won't
with
get
that-
dealt with if we shut down the government.
Well, you know what? That's not you're in charge of the House, the Senate, and the White House. You guys
up
have the
to you.
votes to do it.
Actually, probably you have a little more control in the Senate, because
Well,
we actually kept our word on the filibuster, which is something your party
No,
tried to get rid
well,
of,
they
and
nuked the
only
fili-
two senators
They nuked
you
the
ran away.
filibuster on the nominees last
No.
week, and I don't think, and if Trump tells them to nuke it on this, they probably will.
And the last go-round in the Senate, they did pass it, and look where we have. We're right back where we started with the continued
Anyway,
mess
We are where we
that
are.
we have.
And, you know, but this is, you guys own this. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to tell you both, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it, but Mr. Cole, thank you for bringing the continuing resolution, and thank you for all your work on appropriations. Because, you know, it hasn't been done in a few years. It hasn't happened, and if I'm remembering correctly, there hasn't been conference committees on appropriations in 6 years. Is that correct? And that's longer than I've been here. So we've never been able, people of my, in my class weren't able to see regular order and how appropriations are supposed to happen. So I appreciate that we are in that process now, and we're moving it forward. And this is probably the first CR that actually made sense, that we're actually using it for what we need it to. Using it short term, we're using a clean CR so that we can finish up the work and make sure we get that budget done. So I appreciate it. I'm not going to ask a lot of questions, but I think this is or any questions, but this is a reasonable CR that makes sense to do. And so I appreciate you bringing it forward, and I'm excited to get back to the regular order and actually do the appropriations bills. So thank you, Mr. Cole. And I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Fishbach. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony here today, our appropriators. I do have to oppose this continuing resolution. It is not a clean CR. You know, our Republican colleagues may control the House, the Senate, and the White House, but almost half the country voted for Democrats. They do not have a unified control of the entire government, and while they may have majorities, they may control the legislative process, but in order to pass a bill, they need to work with everyone, and they haven't done the work to get that done. So, you know, the concerns about healthcare are what I hear about every single time I talk with folks in my district. So we just lost the major healthcare system in our district this summer. It collapsed because Medicaid funding was not sufficient. There were also some private equity problems, but the fact that these really obscene Medicaid cuts were coming down the pike prevented anyone else from stepping up to try to keep that place running. We've seen these insane cuts to the National Institute of Health research across our region. 1 in 6 doctors in the country comes through Philadelphia as part of their training. It is a huge hub for research that makes all of us healthier. And right now they are reeling from ovarian cancer trials that have been cut, staffing cuts. We're seeing cuts to healthcare at our VA institutions, and we've got several in the region. So the healthcare concerns are massive, and this bill does nothing to meet them. So we've got the ongoing concern from the cuts we saw in the big bad bill. We've got the unilateral impoundment of health funding from this White House. And now we've got the fact that the Affordable Care Act subsidies have not been continued, and that's having an immediate impact. In the next couple weeks, people's insurance bills for the coming year are going to be going out. We've already seen in Pennsylvania a request from the private insurers to boost their rates by 19%. So all of this damage to healthcare, which is coming from the White House and from the bill that got passed earlier this summer, is raising costs across our district, across the country. So, you know, Madam Ranking Member, we just heard this CR called an extension of the Biden budget. But we already know that a lot was done to the last administration's budget with the CR that passed in March. We know that there were further changes as a result of the big bad bill that passed this summer. We know that there's been impoundment of funding that was supposed to go out under the Biden budget. So can we call this a clean CR that would extend the Biden budgets, especially with respect to healthcare?
This is not a clean CR. This is a 91-page document. It's not a clean CR. In addition to which, the point you make is clear. If we were going with the 2024 budget, as was, what was the Biden? It was Biden budget as was applied to 2025. We would have seen the extension of the funding. Again, I can go program by program. $410 billion. It's really pretty extraordinary. National Institute of Food and Agriculture. It's unbelievable. NOAA disaster funding, DOJ grants. It's everything that was in that has been, impounded. I don't want to use that word. It is stealing because it is illegal as to what the OMB director is all about. And look, $5 billion. The Trump administration is currently on track to withhold as much as $5 billion in congressionally approved funding for biomedical research at the NIH and disease prevention at the CDC. So, and at this point, NIH has typically allocated an additional $2 billion more than it allocated this year. Postponed grant making, OMB delays, NIH is at risk of lapsing funding for potentially research including cancer, Alzheimer's, vaccine, and the list can go on. CDC in unbelievable worse shape, nearly $3 billion behind its annual pace of funding allocations. They're holding hundreds of millions of dollars from HIV/AIDS prevention programs domestically and globally. So it is a full-scale assault and a dismantling of public health in the United States, which is at central to what is happening here. And this is something that we have to have back. You can't do that. And what we had sought was a provision in the continuing resolution that would ensure that unelected bureaucrat Russ Vought cannot permanently steal critical resources. I don't think that that's an unfair ask. It shouldn't be for anyone here. You voted for these things. And now some unelected official says, sorry, we're going to take the money, and God only knows what we're going to do with it, but it ain't going for what you, members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, determined was the best thing for your constituents.
Well, I think that is the bottom line here, okay? The government runs out of funding September 30th. What's been proposed is this not clean CR, and it doesn't meet the moment. It doesn't meet the moment where we've got cuts to the ACA subsidies coming up, doesn't meet the moment where there's been all these cuts to NIH funding, doesn't meet the moment where our hospitals, whether rural or frontline in the city or federally qualified health centers, are struggling to even stay open. So we can't support a bill that doesn't meet the needs of the American people. So thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Scott, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cole, there's been a lot of talk about the premium tax credits. My understanding is that it is the enhanced premium tax credits that would lapse. Is that correct? Not all of the tax credits?
That's correct, although let me immediately add, that's not anything our committee does. That's a Ways and Means, issue. That's not us, but you're right. It is the tax credits that were added for COVID, the time when we were shutting down businesses and people were losing health care, and it was supposed to run out at a certain point. This isn't stuff being cut. This is things running out at the schedule that was agreed upon in a bipartisan way back during COVID.
That's right. And it was agreed upon that the enhanced premium credits would expire in 2022.
Correct.
and in a very bipartisan manner, Democrats and Republicans in the COVID emergency voted for a lot of things
Give me that.
that
Give
the
me
critics of
an example.
those bills would be correct when they said expanded the role of government in our lives. It was a period of time where we had no idea what was going to happen with COVID in a very bipartisan manner, and every one of those pieces of legislation was done in a bipartisan manner when Donald Trump was president of the United States.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then now that the COVID emergency, if you want to call it that, is over with, the Democrat demand is that we continue to spend as if we're in a healthcare emergency as we were with COVID. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
So I will tell you, I'm going to just say this because I don't really know the way they put it. I watched as Democrat after Democrat requested special project after special project, then turn around and vote against them on the floor of the House of Representatives, Mr. Cole. And as someone who doesn't request special projects, I hope you as the chairman will take every single one of those projects out if they request them and then refuse to vote for them on the floor of the House of Representatives. That's a decision. You don't have to answer that now, but I'll tell you, I think it's ridiculous that they continue to ask for that stuff when they vote against them. And that's coming from someone who's never requested one. I have one final question, because I can see where this is going, because the Democrat strategy is to shut the government down and let the Republicans take the blame for it. So I'm just guessing that somewhere around 90% of Republicans are going to vote for a continuing resolution. Is that a reasonable, you think I'm close on that, Mr. Cole?
I think you're a little low. I think it'll be higher than that. But no question, the overwhelming majority of Republicans will vote to keep the government open.
And so if 90% of Republicans vote to keep the government open and 100% of Democrats vote to shut it down, what's going to happen?
It'll shut down.
That's exactly right. And then the Democrats are going to turn around and point the finger and laugh about the government shutdown and blame it on Donald Trump, when ultimately they've got the ability to walk out there and push the green light, just like 90% of Republicans are going to do, but they're going to intentionally fail this. At least their leadership is going to try to intentionally fail it. Some of them may have the backbone to stand up to their leadership, but their leadership is going to try to intentionally fail this. The Democrats want a government shutdown because they want something else they can blame on Donald Trump. And then they're going to turn around and laugh about it. And I'm going to tell you, I'd be real careful when you got Russ sitting in there at OMB at what it might cost you to turn it back on. That's just my advice to my Democrat colleagues in the room, is you need to think twice before you shut it down this time.
You need to think twice.
But it is the enhanced premium tax credits that were supposed to go away at the end of 2022. Not all of the premium tax credits are going away, as the Democrats want you to believe. I want America to know, I expect 90% of Republicans, somewhere in that range, are going to vote for the bill. I expect, maybe a couple of Democrats will vote for it, maybe they won't. But the Democratic leadership is pressing the Dems to vote no on the bill, knowing that if no Democrat votes for the bill, the government's going to shut down, and then they're going to blame Donald Trump. This is the game they play. They do it all the time. It's very predictable. I don't have any other questions for you, Mr. Cole. I wish you the best with your negotiations, Madam Chair. With that, I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member of the Appropriations Committee, for coming before us on this continuing resolution. What has always struck me every time the two of you have come before us is how much you emphasize that the appropriation process is bipartisan.
Correct.
But what also strikes me is that this particular continuing resolution appears to be highly partisan, right? Chairman Cole, it is not a bipartisan continuing resolution, correct?
I would disagree. The length of the resolution is what the Democrats asked.
Is the
There's no partisan elements in this. You're arguing against it for what's not in the bill, not what is in the bill. I always advise legislators, that's a mistake. Judge it what's there. Is there anything offensive in there? No.
Oh, Chairman-
Nobody's mentioned anything offensive. Is it a shortest length that we know you wanted? Yes, it is. The president, the administration wanted it to go into January. We thought, I agree with my friends. I think that was a mistake. But the point is, if it was partisan, I'd have done what the administration asked us to do, not what my Democratic colleagues asked us to do. And again,
But isn't
show me the
bipartisan?
poison pills in there. All we're saying is keep the government open. There's not a problem you've mentioned that's going to get solved if you shut down the government. If you think that's the solution, you're making the same mistake Republicans made in 2013 when they said, we're going to link something that doesn't have to do with day-to-day government, Obamacare, because we don't like it, and you will give in because we shut down the government. Didn't work then, probably won't work now. But whatever it is, I mean, the desire to, this is a clean, let's just keep talking for 7 weeks on 3 bills that we're awfully close on and send them to a package. And that, we hope, will start a pattern of doing it that way. So no, I don't accept the assertion that it's a partisan, it's a clean continuing resolution. It's not a partisan continuing resolution. If you're against it because of what's not in it, that doesn't make it partisan. If you want to put other things in, or you want to have other avenues of negotiation, I think Majority Leader Thune, again, signaled he's willing to talk about this. He's not willing to link it to a 7-week CR.
So bipartisan, by its nature, is bipartisan, which means that both Democrats and Republicans are agreeing on a compromise and have worked something out. Bipartisan means Democrats and Republicans, which is the question. Ranking Member DeLauro, is this a bipartisan CR?
Not by a long shot. And I go back to, and I don't want to lose track, when the four corners, and Chairman Cole and myself, and Chairman Murray, and Chairman Collins, and Ranking Member Murray, when we sat down, we talked about, and there was a willingness. Thank you so much. They talked about the willingness to have a bipartisan negotiation on the continuing resolution. No such negotiation on a bipartisan basis existed. And by the way, I would just say is Senator Thune and Speaker Johnson, after letters from our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, and Leader Schumer, wrote twice in August to the Republican leadership and asked to sit down and speak. And there was no answer, no ability, there was no movement to get the four of that, at that level, four corners at that level to sit down and speak. It asked over and over again. So in no way is this a bipartisan continuing resolution. I have to make this one point. I make it to my chairman. 67 of the pages, of the 91 pages, contain authorizations that more importantly belong with energy and commerce or with ways and means. There are healthcare provisions in there, so it was, you pick and choose what you want to do, and what you don't want to do is to put in. And the things that we're talking about, Democratic priorities in terms of that negotiation, were never ever spoken about or never had the opportunity to engage in conversation about getting them into the bill.
Because, and I'm glad you made it, but I want to go back to the point about bipartisanship. And one of the reasons that it is not a surprise that we are now seeing a CR that is not bipartisan, because it does not contain Democrat and Republican, which is their definition of bipartisan, when you have the president saying, I quote, should not even bother with Democrats, close quote.
Right.
So President Trump has told Republicans, don't even bother with Democrats. He has told Republicans, Republican votes, that's all, close quote. So instead of a bipartisan, which is how you guys always describe what the appropriation process is doing, you have a president saying, I don't want Democrats. I don't want to include Democrats. And he doesn't want to include Democrats because he doesn't want to fix the problems we face. As you pointed out, and I wanted to know, because we keep hearing we can't deal with this, CRs always contain the things we need to fix right now. That's just, I haven't been here as long as some, but it seems to me that that's what we do. And so 67 pages out of 91 contain authorizing language. And there are things that need to be fixed right now. And the issue about the Affordable Care Act premiums, I'm very concerned about that because it is going to hurt rural Americans harder than it is going to hurt urban Americans. And that's because rural Americans, people in my district, people in Oklahoma, rely more heavily on those tax credits. And, these are Republican states that are going to get hit. The states with the highest rural health premium increases are states like Texas and, Oklahoma and the Carolinas. And it's just really a problem because it is going to hit, and it's going to hit on October 1st. That's when this is happening. And the American public is looking at us to come up with a bipartisan solution to this problem, and Republicans are refusing to do it. Because this is something we could do. Is that correct, Ranking Member DeLauro? We could, in a continuing resolution with bipartisan support, fix this problem today.
You said it very eloquently. That has been the premise. We've always, if we have an opportunity to have the debate, have the discussion, some things that you get in that you want, some things may not get in that you want, and it's both sides coming to an agreement. But to be just told that, and again, what the president saying, he told congressional Republicans jam a partisan spending bill down the throats. What are we talking about? Do this without any Democratic support. That is not the way that the process is underway. And this is not a process issue. There is that, but it is about the healthcare services, about the services that are there, whether they're substance use, whether they're rural hospitals, whether they're nursing homes, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, and CDC, NIH. All of these are directly affect people's lives in a way, and that is not being, included in this effort, which is really. But I'll just say this: the OMB director, Russ Vought, is not interested in an appropriations process. His interest is to destroy the appropriations process and take on the ability to make all of the spending decisions. And which is why, if we are honest with ourselves, we have to stop that now, which is why we wanted to include a provision, we sought a provision in the continuing resolution that would ensure that unelected bureaucrats like Russ Vought cannot permanently steal the critical resources that the Congress promised, that each one of us promised to our constituents and to our communities.
So when we look at the continuing resolution, we should look at our constitutional duty and requirement to our constituents to say we control what gets spent, and we want to make sure it gets spent once it gets authorized. Is there anything in this continuing resolution that makes sure that the $410 billion is spent?
No, and I'm going to be pretty specific about this because I looked into it. In the Agriculture Committee, $48 million in sustainable agricultural research and education program funding is being withheld from farmers and ranchers. Millions of dollars in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, operations research funding, and $30 million in NOAA procurement acquisition is being held up. By the way, without the Democratic provision to extend these funds, the National Weather Service work at the National Severe Storms Laboratory in Norman, Oklahoma will not receive the funding, and weather radars across the country. $41 million in the Small Business Administration, development program is being held up by the administration, and without the provision that we were looking for to extend the funds, that small business owners, that's veterans, women, low-income, minority entrepreneurs will be denied critical support. More than $2 billion in Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA grant funding, is being held up by the administration. Without this provision to extend these funds, communities won't have the funding they need for preparedness and response. So what we want to try to do is, why won't the Republicans act to extend these resources to get this funding delivered? $5 billion, which I mentioned already, biomedical research funding at the NIH and the Centers for Disease Control is being held up. And again, without the provision to extend the funds, we're going to lapse life-saving research, Alzheimer's vaccine, and the list goes on, and now just $150 million in homeless assistance grants. Build grants for youth, permanent supportive housing. Biggest issue in the country today is the cost of housing for homes and for apartments. Without that provision to extend the funds, which we wanted to put in, youth, survivors of domestic violence, families experiencing homeless will not have access to stable housing. This is unconscionable. This is real. I'm not making this up. This is not anecdotal. You know, so why wouldn't we want to put in a provision to extend the funding in these efforts so that we can meet the demand that we have thought was necessary to address the ills of our constituents and of the people in this country? Thank you. Sorry.
And these healthcare investments should be bipartisan. Alzheimer's should not be partisan.
Cancer is not
Alzheimer's,
partisan.
Cancer research, investments into health, making sure our rural health systems don't fall apart should be bipartisan. And it is not a clean CR if you don't make sure that these funds are spent and continue into the future. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Ledger-Fernandez. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you,
You're
Madam Chair.
recognized. Mr. Griffith, before you begin, Mr. Cole, are you going to be able to continue to stay with us? My understanding was that you might have to leave.
I've got about 30 minutes, I think.
30 minutes, okay?
How much? What time? Oh, no, my watch is off.
Okay.
Look,
Are you on
it is. It's
Oklahoma?
30 minutes behind, yeah.
Are you on Oklahoma time?
Yeah, we're a little bit slower.
Okay. Well, my understanding
If
was.
it's okay, then I will depart, but I don't want to stay if you need me to stay.
Without objection, you're excused, and we will invite your colleague
My
to.
colleague and my vice chairman of the Full Appropriations Committee, so he's more than that. So,
Mr. Diaz-Balart.
thank you very much.
We welcome you to the Rules Committee, and we thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
For being willing to come. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you very
now
much.
You're recognized.
Mr. Diaz-Balart, did I hear him say that you were the vice chairman of the Appropriations Committee?
Yes, sir.
Vice chairmen are very important, just saying, very important.
Well, Mr. Griffin, I will readily admit that no one can replace Chairman Cole. So
I understand. Same with Virginia
I
Fox.
should have said Vice Chairman Griffith.
there you go. Now I understand.
You've been sitting here for some time listening to the debate. Is there anything that you feel compelled that you need to add to the debate that we've been having?
No, sir. I think the chairman expressed it. This is, in essence, a clean CR with some anomalies. I hear about things that are complaining about what's not in the CR, not about what's in the CR. This is a good CR. This allows us to move forward and, again, hopefully finish the appropriations process the way it's supposed to be finished.
Well, and I would just say it was interesting. We got into this whole debate, about give and take and that kind of thing. And the chairman pointed out that November was something that our colleagues on the other side preferred. And he said he didn't agree with the president. I actually agreed with, I agreed with either a whole year or January, because I hate it when we do these things till right before the week before a holiday. So we've now got it lined up a week before Thanksgiving, and then probably we'll delay till it's a week before Christmas. And that part of it I don't like, but when you look at the overall bill, I would agree. I didn't see anything in it that I thought would stir anybody up, but here we are having hours of debate. But just think it's interesting that concession on one point doesn't give you enough to move the folks on the other side. Nonetheless, I'm happy to yield anytime you might wish to discuss issues. Otherwise, Madam Chair,
Thank you.
I'm prepared to yield back. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member and Mr. Vice Chairman. Welcome back to the Rules Committee. Mr. Vice Chairman, I guess I wanted to start with you and maybe ask you a couple of questions process-wise. And I promise you there's a point to this line of questioning. Are you or were you supportive of the decision by Senate Republicans to eliminate the filibuster for Supreme Court nominees?
Again, that, as you know, that's clearly not an appropriations question, and that's a question for the Senate to decide.
You have no opinion about whether that was the right thing?
I literally have been focused on the appropriations process, which is our constitutional duty. That's what I've been focused on.
Were you or are you supportive of the Senate's decision earlier this week, or rather, I guess it was last week, to change the filibuster, to modify the filibuster for an exception to be drawn for the confirmation of executive officials, sub-cabinet level officials? Maybe your answer is the same.
It is. It is. Again, the Senate, I'm not part of the Senate. Yeah, right, exactly. I'm not part of the Senate, and obviously they have different rules than we do. And
Sure.
what we're trying to do here is make sure we don't have a government shutdown and we'll continue the process.
So here's why I asked that question. I presume that President Trump will convince the holdouts in the Republican caucus to vote for this Republican CR, and it'll go over to the Senate. My understanding, at least, is at this juncture, is that it is unlikely to receive the 60 votes necessary to survive cloture. And so, given that, the reason why I was asking those questions is curious about your opinion as to whether or not, if the Senate were to proceed, if Senate Republicans were to proceed in drawing out an exception to the filibuster for purposes of continuing resolution consideration, if that's something you'd be supportive of.
And again, the Senate rules are the Senate rules, obviously, as you know. I don't claim to be an expert on the Senate rules. I will tell you that we had a similar process a while ago when we did the CR, and the Democratic leader in the Senate said that he was willing to shut down the government. We passed the CR in the House, and the Senate, even though he had threatened publicly to shut down the government, then passed that CR, which I think was, at the moment, the best potential option. And so what we're trying to do here is avoid a shutdown.
Well, you've answered my question. I guess
Yeah.
I will say you may be the only member of Congress I've ever met who has no opinions on the filibuster or Supreme Court nominees or the rest, but in any event, that's fine. Why don't we talk about the CR? So the last time you were here, I don't know if you might recall, we had an exchange about rescissions. I think it was in relation to...
We've had a few of those.
I enjoy our exchanges. It was in regards to rescissions and in particular around public broadcasting. Here's my question. This bill, I think it was already articulated and gleaned through the ranking member's testimony, that there are no protections in this bill that ultimately would safeguard the appropriations that you passionately believe in terms of those appropriations not being impounded nor being rescinded. And so my question to you, I mean, I assume you agree with that. There's no new language in this bill, right? That's not up for debate. Okay. Well, I don't, characterization about clean or non-clean, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, there's no new provision that says, you know what, you're not going to be able to impound funds that we're appropriating, right? Or you're not going to be able to rescind funds that we're appropriating. Given that, why have appropriations at all? What's the point?
Yeah, I mean, we did have those conversations during the rescission process, and I think we all agree, whether we like it or not, that that's part of the law. I mean, Congress can change the law, and the process, House, Senate, et cetera.
But impoundments.
So that whole rescission issue was a legal process, whether we like it or not. What we're trying to do here, sir.
What about impoundments?
What we're trying to do here is not shut down the government. And so we are facing.
You've said
whether
that
we
about
like it or-
5 times.
Well, but that's because that's what this bill does. So we
Okay.
can talk about other things about what the Senate may do on a Thursday if it's cloudy.
Okay,
But what
all right.
this bill does
I'll
is
reclaim my
try to
time.
avoid a shutdown.
I'll reclaim my time. Here, I'll give you a much simpler example, because you're in charge of the State Foreign Ops Committee, right? You're the chairman, I think?
Yeah, it's NSRP, National Security, State and Related Programs.
National Security Related Programs, okay.
Correct.
So this CR funds at current levels a variety of programs that come under your jurisdiction. And you feel very passionately about supporting those. And if this bill is passed and is signed into law, there is nothing stopping this president from impounding any number of the programs that you care about. Why do we know that? Because he's done it already, repeatedly, for the last 8 months. So my point is, it begs the larger question. At some point, we're going to have a debate in the Congress about whether to have an appropriations committee. It doesn't strike me, in this environment, I'm not really sure what the purpose is of the work that you do, because, you know, we spend a lot of time debating appropriation bills and CRs at current fiscal year levels, also that Russell Vogt and the folks at OMB can disregard all of your work. I don't get it. I'm not really sure. You know what, Mr. Diaz-Balart, I predict this will be true. I think you will see members, new members, incoming members of the House, who used to believe that the Appropriations Committee was a prized assignment, somewhere that they'd love to go serve, that they will now say, you know what, I'm no longer interested in serving on the Appropriations Committee. What's the point of serving on the Appropriations Committee? There is no appropriations process. Russell Vogt has broken it into pieces.
If I may. If I may. Yeah, look.
Go ahead.
I think, no, I think your thought, you're thinking about, you know, we should have those conversations is absolutely a positive thing to do. And this pressure, or this back and forth between Congress and the administration, as you know, is not new. I recall when we had a different president who decided to fund things that were neither appropriated nor authorized. And, you know, so this is not new. I'm talking about President Biden did that with, for example, the student loan things. So I actually, by the way, welcome your thoughts and your concern about making sure that Congress is relevant. But if we shut down, because I go back to what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with here is, do we pass the CR to allow the appropriations process to continue, or do we shut down? That's what we're dealing with here today.
You raise a really interesting point. So if the CR is passed and it's signed into law, will you come back 6 weeks from now and agree to add this new language to make Congress relevant again, as you said? I mean, why not? That sounds like you're saying this is something we got to deal with, we got to address, and I mean, you're going to be testifying in front of this committee, I'm sure,
I hope so.
seven
I hope
weeks from
so.
now,
I
8
hope
weeks from
so.
now. I think Chairman Cole will give you that assignment again, and so you're going to have an opportunity, but it sounds like you might be supportive of saying, you know what, let's put some language in here to stop any kind of impoundments, for example, that ultimately undermine the appropriations that you're fighting for. You know, the appropriation decisions, I should say, that you and your colleagues on both sides of the aisle are fighting for. Is that something you'd support?
And I appreciate that. We have a process, as you know, which is the appropriations process, where bills go to subcommittee, full committee,
you're
they're
in
debated.
charge.
Well, what I'm telling you is that we have a process.
Sure.
Where we have bills that go through subcommittee, full committee. Eventually, hopefully, right, they will land here, because everything ends here.
Sure.
And my colleagues and I, and on both sides of the aisle, will have those discussions, and by the way, have had those discussions. That's why you have
But I'm asking
bills.
if you support them.
Bills.
Because I can speak for the Democrats, trust me. I mean, we
Well,
have Rosa here.
You can speak
Trust
for the
me, we're-
Democrats, but I don't remember the outrage and when the previous administration decided to fund things that were not only not appropriated, they weren't authorized or appropriated. So that's why I'm telling you, these are good discussions to have, but right now, we need to focus on what we have in front of us,
Okay,
if I may,
well-
which is, if we don't pass a CR, what are we facing? A potential shutdown. That, by the way, is in nobody's best interest.
Well, I'm going to stop there because I appreciate the chairwoman's indulgence. But I will just say, again, you're going to have an opportunity 6 or 7 weeks from now. I predict that that's going to be the case. And I hope, I mean, again, we don't need to have a discussion about it. Democrats will support language that puts up guardrails. And at the end of the day, I think it's a now or never moment, in my view, for Republicans to step up and defend the prerogatives of the Congress and the Constitution. But Ranking Member Delora, I guess I might, if I might.
I would just make this one point, Mr. Neguse, in that I think the heartbeat of the Congress is the appropriations process. It's $1.7 trillion every single year. You can find a bill that we enact for 5 years and then it's gone, 10 years and it's gone. This is every single year. And we have gone back and forth, Democrats and Republicans, historically, and we've hammered out which of the issues that make sense, where we fight for some, Republicans fight for some, we come to a conclusion, and we get the bills and going forward. That is at the heart of what is happening here. And you make a very good point, because what is at stake? And I'm not willing to do in the appropriations process. I will fight like hell, because I believe it really is the guts of what this federal government is all about. I wish my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who care deeply about some of these issues. Otherwise, quite honestly, they wouldn't have voted for them the $410 billion that has been terminated or frozen. They wouldn't have. But right now is the time to talk about where the appropriations process goes. If we give in again and again and again, Russ Vogt will have won the day and taken it over for the, I don't even believe for the executive. He takes it over for just aggrandizing the power in his own hands.
I thank the Ranking Member. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neguse. Mr. Jack, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just one question to the Vice Chairman. As you were closing your thoughts and your exchange with Mr. Neguse, I would love for you just to explain to the committee, explain to those watching at home, the consequences of not passing this CR, of not doing our job for funding the government. You were walking through just how devastating that would be, but could you specify that a little bit more for this committee?
Thank you, sir. Our fiscal year ends, right, at the end of this month. That's the reality. And if we don't pass this short-term CR, that's the reality, which means, in essence, the government shuts down. And when the government shuts down, then certain things that I think would all agree we have to do are just no longer possible to do. To pay salaries of certain key individuals, to move forward on the essential things that government must do. Again, keep the lights on, literally keep the lights on. And so that's what's at stake here. And so I think, we can have debates all day long, and those are, I think, appropriate and helpful, potentially, about what maybe additionally should be in this short-term CR to keep the lights open. But if we don't pass this short-term CR, we are facing a government shutdown. And what Chairman Cole and the Republican appropriators, and I think the Republicans are trying to do, is avoid that, is avoid a government shutdown just till, again, November. Then, in the meantime, give us the opportunity to hash out these issues through the appropriations process. We are now faced with two options: shutdown or a CR. This CR is, frankly, with some anomalies, a clean CR. And so, yeah, we could argue about maybe there should be something else that does. Those are legitimate conversations to have. But what is in front of us now is to avoid a government shutdown and give a little bit more time for the regular process to move forward.
And for those debates to occur, as they surely will.
Correct, sir.
In committee. Well, I just want to note, if I'm not mistaken, H.R. 1968, the full year Continuing Appropriations and Extensions Act that was passed back in March was passed with a bipartisan vote on the House floor. I hope to see that again later this week. And with that, Madam Chair, I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Jack. Mr. Norman, you're recognized.
Thank you both for showing up. I have no questions. I don't like CRs, but this one makes sense at this time. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Mr. Roy, you're recognized.
Thank the Chairwoman. Just a couple of quick questions. Taking at face value, and that is word, that the gentleman is not a United States Senator, the questions that were asked of you, I think it merits observing that the rule change that is currently the Senate has put forth is in direct response, without getting into the intricacies of the Senate, not being a United States Senator, is in response to an extraordinary historic level of blocking nominees. Would the gentleman agree?
Yeah, the facts speak for themselves on that, so I would agree.
As the majority leader of the Senate noted, that when you look at the voice votes or unanimous consents in the first term of different presidents, or in the terms of different presidents, that 96% under H.W. Bush, 98% under Clinton, 90% under W. Bush, 90% under Obama, 65% under Trump 1, 57% under Biden, 0% under Trump 2. Now, that's according to the majority leader of the Senate. You can take up those facts with the majority leader. My point is just this. It has been an enormous blocking of the Senate confirmation process by Democrats in the upper chamber. Would the gentleman agree that that is roughly observable by anybody who follows politics?
Mr. Roy, obviously I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I think there's been widespread reporting to basically that reflects in essence what you've just stated.
Roger. And so I would just, a couple other quick things, because a lot of numbers have been thrown around and so forth. Just to be very clear, we're talking about essentially a freeze in spending at current levels through November 20th. Is that what we're putting forward?
Yes, an extension of that, which is, you're right, it would be in essence a freeze till November. Yes, sir.
And when you account for the rescissions that have been carried out this year, $9 billion roughly, I'm rounding, voted on by Congress following the law and the statutes, $9 billion of rescissions that we voted on, and then roughly, as I understand it, $5 billion of what the administration refers to as pocket rescissions, which is in the courts, and they'll sort that out. Isn't that roughly the numbers we're talking about?
No, you're accurate on the numbers, yes.
And so when you account for those, and you look at the bill we have before us, and you look at the anomalies in question, we are not only freezing spending, we're actually a little lower year over year. Is that correct?
I think that would be accurate.
And so we can have a whole lot of noise about what's happening or not happening, but for the average American just tuning in, all we're trying to do is continue to carry forward the operations of government under a president who is trying to reform the government, who is actually trying to hold back wasteful spending, a lot of the stuff we found under Doge, with a Congress that is trying to work with the president to actually have rescissions to carry out a lot of waste and fraud and abuse and programs that the American people don't particularly like, a few of which I know the gentleman has himself advocated for reforms and changes, and to carry forward a spending level that will now allow for the continuation of the appropriations process, which I might add, this House, this side of the Congress has passed, what, 2 through the floor, 9 through full committee, and 1 through subcommittee? Do I have that right?
The appropriation bills, we've actually passed all 12 through full committee, sir.
Okay, sorry. So it was misunderstood. So 2 off the floor and the other 10 through full committee. Is that right?
I think it's 3 off the floor.
Three
off the floor, but all 12 through the full committee.
Well, even
Yes, sir.
better than I thought. So the fact of the matter is, those bills are moving. Is the Senate ahead of us?
I'm not sure where
No,
the Senate
in
is
terms
on
of what the Senate
on the
will do.
appropriation bills. On the appropriation bills, my understanding is that the Senate is, which is by the way a change for them, is actually trying to move their appropriation bills forward, Mr. Roy, which is why it would be helpful to have the CR so we don't shut down and we can continue the process.
That was a question on purpose, to say that the Senate has bills that they've moved. So now there can be a process for determining whether or not there's going to be able to be conference during that time with the bills that have passed and the matching of the various bills. And then if Democrats move away from what they normally do, which is blocking our ability to move these through, then we can move appropriations bills. Is that correct?
That is the goal, sir, to not shut down the government first, which is what we're dealing with here today, right? Stop the government from shutting down and then move forward with the appropriation bills. Correct, sir.
And the last point is this number that has been thrown around of $410 billion, is that not just an amalgamation of programs that are being cherry-picked and put together as some large number, as opposed to, we're talking about that we're holding spending in check, that we've got a rescissions, like I said, that we voted on for $9 billion, $5 billion in pocket rescissions, and we're holding spending at current levels. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about a lot of different things, sir, but I think it is important to kind of hone in onto what we're dealing with today, what's in front of you today. What's in front of you today is a CR just through November to do precisely what you have just said, which is to allow the appropriations process to move forward. And the alternative to that is not theory. The alternative to that, unfortunately, right now, is a government shutdown. And that's something that some of us believe would be really devastating for this country.
I appreciate the chairman coming and testifying, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. That concludes the hearing portion. It concludes the panel. And so we excuse the two persons from the Appropriations Committee, and we thank you very much. I now welcome our second panel, Representative Luna from the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Your full statement will be submitted for the record, and we ask that you summarize your statement in 5 minutes.